Welcome to my Wilderness Free-to-Play Ultimate Ironman series. I understand the genre is a bit niche, but I find that restricted accounts are some of the most enjoyable accounts to play on. So I wanted to share my experience playing this account because I had so much fun doing it. So since this is the first episode, I want to go over the rules to the account. The rules will always be listed at the beginning of the video, but I want to clarify them by talking about them as well. Rule number 1 is that I have to play as an Ultimate Ironman. This is pretty simple. I just have to follow the standard Ironman rules. I also cannot bank as an Ultimate Ironman. The reason I chose Ultimate Ironman instead of just a regular Ironman is because there is no bank inside the free-to-play wilderness, so there's not really a point to playing standard Ironman. I might as well make it officially an Ultimate Ironman at that point. So rule number 2 is that I cannot gain experience outside the wilderness. This rule is pretty simple. Anything past the wilderness ditch is fair game. Anything outside the wilderness ditch is off limits. Now rule 3 states that I cannot pick up items while outside the wilderness. It's similar to the previous rule, but it applies to item spawns rather than gaining experience. There are some clever exceptions though, like telegrabbing items over the wilderness ditch, because as long as I'm standing inside the wilderness, I'm fine to grab any items. Rule number 4 is that I cannot interact with NPCs outside the wilderness. This includes things like shops and quests. So the one exception to this rule is that I am allowed to get Ultimate Ironman armor. This armor is equivalent to iron armor, so it's not overpowered or anything. It just allows me to have some basic armor at the start, and it shows that I'm playing by official Ultimate Ironman rules, because if I can't wear the armor, then, I'm not an Ironman. Additionally, all these rules start when I leave Tutorial Island. On Tutorial Island, I am allowed to interact with NPCs because I wouldn't be able to complete the tutorial without doing so. I'm also allowing myself to gain the maximum experience allowed on Tutorial Island. There are several reasons for this. One is that I might as well do it while my rules are nulled. 2 is that a couple skills are very difficult to level up early on. Very difficult. So the level 3 boost really helps the early game. Mainly that applies to mining and smithing, which are brutal, absolutely brutal before level 15. But I'll explain more about how I plan to level up those skills later on. Most, if not all, of these audio clips are recorded as post-commentary. I'm just letting you guys know that in advance. So the first thing I do when I leave Tutorial Island is clear my inventory of all items. I didn't get any of these items in the wilderness, so I need to drop them before I go. This is, of course, part of Rule 3. Next, I grab my Ultimate Ironman armor, because having some starting armor is going to be quite useful. This is the one exception to the NPC interaction rule. Now that I'm ready, it's time to go to the wilderness ditch. Inside the wilderness are some pretty dangerous things. I have to survive against monsters as well as PKers. Thankfully, the free-to-play wilderness isn't super dangerous except during PK clan events. Those can be sort of dangerous in the lower levels near Edgeville and Varrock. The first thing, though, that I want to do is grab some combat gear for training. There is an Iron Scimitar in the Boneyard, and that's where I'll be heading first. Iron Scimitar is really great because I can wield it at level 1 attack, and it's pretty much the best weapon I can wield as of now. There's also an Iron Kite Shield kind of near where Vedion spawns. That'll be my best defensive shield for now. However, I don't want to head there immediately because along the way is the Chaos Temple, and that place is great for training prayer because there's a lot of regular bone spawns in it. The Boneyard is actually better because it has those big bone spawns, but the problem is you have to deal with a lot of skeletons, and unless you have high defense, you're really going to get shredded pretty fast. You have to have maybe like 30 defense and some decent armor to actually last there. And for right now, food is kind of an issue for me to get, so it's going to be a struggle to be able to get enough food to survive there long enough to make the prayer training actually viable. So while I'm at the Chaos Temple, I decided to get 4 prayer. I felt like that was a good start. I didn't want to spend forever there and just train prayer non-stop. I do want to get 43 prayer at some point because that will allow me to unlock the protection prayers. Now, I walked all the way to the west side of the wilderness where there's the ruins, because there's a lot of rats to train on, and actually discovered something really sad, and that's that you can't pick up the fishing net spawn there because it's a bug in the RuneScape code. Um, it's something to do with the Ironman code, and I think it's relevant to like hunter traps and stuff. So for now, fishing is kind of ruled out. So I decided to first train my attack and strength up to level 10, because I think those are good starting points. And once I'm level 10 in each of those, I decided to train on the bigger rats next, because those drop bones and they also drop raw rat meat, which is decent food. So this right here is my first genie, and genies are extremely exciting because that's the only way I can level up mining until level 15. So to get one that early is phenomenal. So after getting 10 attack and strength, I decided it was time to move on to the bigger rats. Now, I wanted to train defense here so that I would take less damage, but the problem is I was taking way too much damage already from these giant rats. So I ended up having to go back to the tiny rats to train defense up to 10. Now, the thing is, I got a lot of meat off those giant rats, and those are nice for food, but I didn't really have a way to cook them as of now because I don't have a tinderbox. I needed to go around the wilderness and kind of gather a bunch of different resources that would be useful to me. I came across some bronze bolts, and these are going to be great because it's pretty much the only ammunition I can use to train ranged in free-to-play wilderness. There's no bows in the free-to-play wilderness, so I can only use a crossbow. I also came across this iron bar. This is going to be so good once I hit 15 smithing, but for now it's not so useful. So I just gathered a handful of bronze bolts. I didn't want to devote a lot of time to just sitting there. So the next stop is the graveyard, which is where the zombies are. A lot of people will probably remember this from Dragon Slayer and free-to-play because you had to go here to get planks. There's a crossbow spawn here, so that is going to be my only ranged weapon. There's also a few item spawns, and those are great because I can sell those items that I get from them at the Bandit Camp store. Next, I wanted to get some steel plate legs, and you can get those in the ruins in the middle of the wilderness. The problem is there's a lot of bots here, and it's dangerous because, you know, when there's bots, that means there's going to be PKers. So, but I managed to land a pair of them after hopping a few worlds to get them. So they were pretty difficult to get my hands on, though. So after that, Bandit Camp is next. It's pretty dangerous. Thankfully, I got a few stats up beforehand. But here I can buy a lot of useful tools, particularly the tinderbox. I can also buy a pickaxe and axe, so those are basic tools. Really good. I'm glad I picked up those extra items in the graveyard because they allowed me to have some extra cash and be able to afford some of these tools. So tinderbox, hammer, axe, those are going to be the main ones that I'm using right now. The pickaxe isn't going to really be useful until I get 15 mining. But I decided to buy one anyway because, I mean, why not? There's also a cape seller right here, so I decided to get a nice snazzy cape or two. I kind of had a hard time deciding between blue and yellow, but I went with yellow after a while. It looks a lot better. The Bandit Camp is kind of going to be my home for a little while because there's a lot of useful things here. In particular, the tomato and cheese spawn are really good because it's just food I can grab off the table and eat immediately. You know, compared to rat meat where I have to cook them every time, and that's kind of a pain. You know, I can't just eat it immediately right after I get it. So it takes a little bit of time to find logs, light a fire, and cook them. However, this is going to be a great place for training cooking as well. I can bring rat meat here, and I don't have to bother lighting a fire on the spot, which is great. I can also buy pizza dough here in the future. So if I ever get 35 cooking, which I think is a reasonable goal, I'll be able to actually cook pizzas, and those are going to be phenomenal for food because, holy cow, they heal so much. I can't remember how much they heal. It's either like 6 or 7 per bite, but man, that's so much better than 3 per bite with rat meat or cheese. It's like the difference is huge. So that's definitely going to be one of my goals, is to get 35 cooking as soon as possible. After I gathered a lot of food, I wanted to try my hand at some of the monsters in the wilderness. Now, the bandits have a lot of good drops like weapons and runes, but I tried flinching Donnie the Lad, and he was way too tanky for me to even have a chance at killing him. So I tried a skeleton next. Now, skeletons drop bronze bars, which is going to be really good for me early smithing. This is pretty much the only way I'm going to get from 3 to 15 smithing. But again, I just was getting shredded at these guys. I had to give up pretty much immediately before I even got my first kill. So I decided to go cut some trees because I figure having a decent woodcutting level is going to be kind of nice because it means I can cut logs faster, which means I can make fires faster, which means I can cook food faster. So I just want to get a base level, like 15 or so. So that's what I did. I just cut trees just north of the monastery until I got 15 woodcutting, and then I can cut oaks. So it's kind of nice. I have access to more types of trees as well because there's not just regular trees in the wilderness. So I decided I really needed to buckle down and just train intense combat for a while. So I decided to go all the way to the east to just north of the sawmill, and there's a bunch of rats, giant rats. So I could kill those for meat and bones and just keep getting my combat levels up and be able to supply myself with food, which is important. So with the new gear that I got, steel plate legs mainly, I could tank these guys out and actually heal for more than I got damaged. You know, because every time I'd get something that healed 3, and I would most of the time take less than 3 damage from killing them. So I kind of had a self-sustaining system at this point. I actually got pretty lucky here, and I got myself my second genie. So more mining XP, I guess. So this is going to be my primary cooking training right now. I need to get it up to 35, and that's going to take a long time, especially with just rat meat, but eventually we'll get to the point in which I won't be burning rat meat anymore, which is very good. It means I have to kill less rats to get a full inventory of meat. As you can see, I'm stockpiling rat meat up, and what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to head over to the zombies in the graveyard, because they have some actual useful drops that I can get. So if I bring a full inventory of food there, I could possibly get some goodies. Some of those goodies include things like nature runes, body runes, law runes, and they also drop copper ores, which I could possibly smith into bronze if I can get a tin ore alongside of it. So something I want to say here is I'm sorry about this episode being so chaotic. I really want to try to focus on specific goals in later episodes. But this episode, I kind of had to do a little bit of everything. A lot of exploring and picking up items, which isn't the most exciting thing, but in the future, I definitely want to focus on specific goals, like getting my magic up, or getting my smithing up, or training on a specific monster for drops to feed skills. So that's kind of the plan for the future. So yeah, this is pretty much the end of this episode. I really enjoyed playing this account, and honestly, it's a lot of fun to share it, and to show that something like this is possible, and to show all the boundaries of like what this account can really do. So I'll try and pump out another episode pretty soon. I really appreciate you watching. Thanks.